Caleb Reed saw the body at mile marker 47. He'd driven this stretch 1,000 times, headed for a bank meeting he couldn't win, and the shape on the shoulder didn't register at first. Just another piece of the desert trying to reclaim the asphalt. Then he saw the dress, floral cotton, torn at the seam, one shoe missing. Dark hair spread across gravel like spilled ink. He pulled over. Gravel crunched under his boots. The air smelled like diesel and blood, hot enough to shimmer. He knelt, his knees protesting, and touched her shoulder, still warm. Her eyes opened. Brown, dilated with terror. "Don't let them find me." The words came out broken, barely a whisper. Then her head rolled back, unconscious. Caleb's hand moved to her neck, pulse, faint but there. He looked down the empty highway, nothing but heat waves and silence, then back at her torn dress, the bruises already darkening her arms. He'd seen worse in Vietnam, but that was a different life. He carried her to the truck and drove. The highway stretched empty behind him in the rearview mirror, no witnesses, no help coming. Her head rolled against the passenger window with each bump, leaving a small smear of blood on the glass. The Reed Ranch sat 15 miles off the main road, down a track that wasn't much more than a suggestion in the caliche. His truck bounced through ruts dried hard as concrete, dust plumes rising behind like smoke signals nobody was watching for. The broken windmill came into view first, it always did. Black iron skeleton against the white sky, one blade hanging crooked where the bearing had seized up 2 years back. He hadn't fixed it. Hadn't been able to make himself climb up there since Kate died. The house was small, wood frame, painted white once, but now the color of old bone. He pulled up close to the porch steps and cut the engine. The sudden silence was thick, broken only by the tick of hot metal cooling and the distant complaint of a mockingbird. Caleb got out, moved around to her side. She was lighter than he expected when he lifted her, all bone and dehydration. Her head fell against his chest. He could smell sweat and fear on her and something else. Perfume, faint but expensive. It didn't match the torn work dress or the split lip. Inside, the air was stale and hot. He kicked the door shut behind him and carried her to the couch, laying her down on the cracked leather. The cushions exhaled dust. He grabbed a wool blanket from the closet, one Kate had woven, the edges still bound in her careful stitches, and spread it over the girl's legs. Then he stood there, breathing hard, looking at what he'd brought into his house. She was young, late 20s maybe, dark hair tangled with bits of gravel. The bruises on her arms were fresh, fingerprints in purple and yellow. Her dress had a tag sewn inside the collar, half torn, but still legible. Desert Rose Farms. Labor contractor. He'd heard of Desert Rose. Everybody had. Big operation, north of here. Brought in migrant workers for the harvest season. Paid in cash, asked no questions. The kind of place you didn't look at too close if you wanted to keep your peace. Caleb checked her pockets. No wallet, no phone. Just a crumpled pay stub torn at the corner with her name written in smeared blue ink. L. Castellano. 40, week 3. $40, 3 weeks. He folded the stub and set it on the side table. Her hands caught his attention. They were blistered across the palms, the kind of blisters you got from tool handles or rope, but the skin underneath was too soft. He'd worked with enough ranch hands to know the difference between someone who'd been at it a month and someone who'd been at it a lifetime. These hands hadn't been at it long. He went to the kitchen and filled a glass with water from the tap. The pipes groaned. When he came back, her eyes were open. She stared at him, not moving, barely breathing, pure animal terror frozen in her face. "Easy," he said, keeping his voice low. "You're safe." She didn't blink. He held out the water. "You need to drink." "Did you—" Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "Did you call the police?" "No. Don't." The word came out sharp, almost a command, then softer, desperate. "Please, don't." Caleb studied her. The fear was real, so was the bruising. He set the water on the table within her reach. Wasn't planning on it. She didn't move toward the glass, just kept watching him, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He walked to the kitchen, needing distance, needing to think. The calendar hung on the wall by the refrigerator, a free one from the feed store, with a picture of a John Deere tractor he'd never be able to afford. He'd been marking off days in pencil. 30 left, 30 days until the bank took the ranch. He'd been on his way to beg Frank Garvey for an extension when he found her. The coffee pot still had grounds from yesterday. He dumped them in the sink and started a fresh batch, the smell of it filling the small kitchen, bitter and familiar. The percolator hissed and bubbled. Through the window over the sink, he could see the windmill, motionless in the heat. Behind him, he heard her move, a soft intake of breath, like she was testing her injuries. "What's your name?" he asked, not turning around. Silence. "Says El Castellano on your pay stub." More silence. Then quietly, "Lena." "Lena." He nodded. "I'm Caleb Reed. This is my place. You can stay until you're fit to move. But I'm not asking questions. And you're not volunteering answers. That work for you? Yes. The coffee finished with a final sputter. He poured 2 cups, turned to bring one to her, and froze. Through the front window, dust was rising on the access road. A truck engine coming closer. He recognized the sound. That particular diesel rattle. Sheriff Wade Hollis. Caleb glanced at Lena. She'd heard it too. She was sitting up now, clutching the blanket, her face drained of what little color it had. The engine got louder. Caleb stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind him. The wood was hot under his boots, the boards bleached gray from years of sun. Wade's patrol truck rolled to a stop in the yard, engine ticking in the heat. The sheriff took his time getting out, adjusting his hat, hitching his belt up over a gut that had gotten considerably larger since he'd taken the job 3 years back. Caleb. Wade's voice was friendly, easy. That was the danger with him. He always sounded reasonable. Wade. Hell of a morning for a drive. Wade walked up to the porch steps but didn't climb them. Just stood there at the bottom, one boot on the first riser, surveying the property like he was already measuring it for auction. Saw your truck headed back from the highway, moving fast. Had business in town. That right? Wade smiled, but his eyes were flat. Thought your business was with Frank Garvey. 10 o'clock appointment. He called me when you didn't show. Caleb said nothing. The mockingbird in this cottonwood started up again, running through its repertoire of stolen songs. Thing is, Wade continued, scratching his jaw, we got a call this morning from Desert Rose Farms. They're missing a worker, young woman. Took off last night from the transport van. They're real concerned about her welfare. That's so. It is. Wade's hand rested on his belt, casual, fingers an inch from his service weapon. Now I'm driving around, checking the area, and I see your truck flying back from that exact same stretch of highway. Thought I'd ask, you see anything unusual out there? Caleb met his gaze. Saw a dead coyote, mile 42. Wade nodded slowly. Huh. Nothing else? Nothing worth mentioning. The silence stretched. A bead of sweat ran down Wade's temple, darkening the brim of his hat. The smell of dust and hot metal hung between them. Caleb, I'm going to be straight with you. Wade took his boot off the step. Desert Rose has contracts with some important people. State Agriculture Board, Labor Department. They don't like it when their workers just disappear. Makes folks ask questions nobody wants asked. What kind of questions? The kind about working conditions, pay rates, immigration status. Wade's smile was gone now. You harboring someone who doesn't want to be found? That's aiding and abetting. Could be conspiracy, depending on what she's running from. You understand what I'm saying? Caleb's jaw tightened. I understand you're taking your time getting to a point. Wade's hand moved closer to his weapon. Not a threat, exactly. Just a reminder. Point is, if you happen to come across this missing woman, you call me first. Don't try to be a hero. Don't think you're helping. These situations, they get complicated real quick. I'll keep that in mind. You do that. Wade turned to go, then stopped. He reached into his truck and pulled out a manila envelope, thick with papers. Almost forgot. Frank asked me to drop this off, seeing as you missed your appointment and all. And he climbed the steps and held out the envelope. Caleb took it. The paper was heavy, official. The weight of it told him everything he needed to know. 30 days, Wade said quietly. That's what Frank told me. 30 days to come up with the full amount, or the bank starts foreclosure proceedings. He glanced around the property again. Be ashamed to lose a place like this. Your daddy built this house, didn't he? Get off my land. Wade raised his hands, backing down the steps. Just trying to help, Caleb. You need money. There are people willing to talk. Marcus Thornton, for instance. He's been buying up properties in the valley. Pays fair prices. Cash deals, no questions. I said, get off my land. Wade climbed into his truck. The engine turned over with a diesel roar. He leaned out the window. Think about it. And remember what I said about that missing girl. You see her? You call me. He drove off, dust rising in his wake until the truck disappeared down the access road. Caleb stood there holding the envelope, listening to the silence return. Then he went inside. Lena was standing by the window, pressed against the wall where she couldn't be seen from outside. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. He's gone, Caleb said. She didn't move. He knows. Well, he suspects. Different thing. Not for long. She pushed away from the wall, wrapping her arms around herself. They'll find me. They always find people who run. Caleb sat down at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. The papers inside were crisp, professional. The first page had the bank's letterhead at the top, Thornton County Savings and Loan. Below that, in bold type, Notice of Default. He scanned the text. Legal language, most of it, but the numbers were clear enough. Total amount due, $450,000. Payment deadline, 30 days. Failure to remit would result in immediate foreclosure proceedings. At the bottom, 2 signatures. Frank Garvey, bank manager, and below that, printed in smaller type, "On behalf of Thornton Investments, LLC." Caleb stared at that second name, Marcus Thornton, the same man Wade had just mentioned. The same man buying up the valley. His hands tightened on the paper, knuckles going white. Lena appeared in the doorway. She'd moved quietly. He hadn't heard her approach. She looked at the papers spread across the table, and something changed in her expression. Not fear anymore. Focus. "How much?" she asked. "Doesn't concern you." She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the document. "Too fast, too expert. 450,000, 30-day demand. That's not a standard foreclosure notice. That's acceleration." She looked up at him. "They're not giving you time to refinance. They want the property." Caleb studied her. "You know a lot about bank documents for someone picking crops." She caught herself, stepped back. But it was too late. The mask had slipped. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, her eyes dropped to the signature line. She went very still. "Thornton," she whispered. "Marcus Thornton owns your note? You know him?" "No." But her voice was shaking. "I know the type. Men like him, they don't just want your land. They want you gone." And she looked out the window, toward the broken windmill standing black against the white sky. "And they'll use anything to get it." The next morning, Caleb found her in the yard before dawn. She was standing by the fence line that separated the near pasture from the dry creek bed, studying the sagging wire like it was a puzzle she could solve. "You should be resting," he said. "I can't just sit." She turned to face him. The bruises on her face had darkened overnight, purple and yellow blooming across her cheekbone. "Let me help." "Help with what?" "Whatever needs doing." Caleb looked at her hands. The blisters from yesterday had opened during the night, weeping clear fluid. "Those hands aren't fit for ranch work." "Then they'll toughen up." Something in her voice, not defiance exactly, but determination, made him reconsider. He'd spent 5 years alone out here, talking to ghosts and broken equipment. Maybe having someone else around, even a stranger with secrets, was better than the silence. "All right," he said. "Fence needs mending. 3 posts down, wires loose in 4 places. You know how to string barbed wire? Teach me." He went to the barn and came back with 2 pairs of work gloves, wire cutters, and a spool of fresh wire. Billy Moss was already there, his battered Ford pickup idling in the yard. Billy was 19, all elbows in Adam's apple, the son of a man Caleb had served with in Vietnam. The kid worked 3 ranches to keep his mother's place afloat. "Morning, Mr. Reed." Billy killed the engine and climbed out. He stopped when he saw Lena. "Ma'am." "This is Lena," Caleb said. "She's helping today." Billy nodded, asking nothing. That was the thing about ranch kids. They learned early not to pry. They worked through the morning heat, the sun climbing white and merciless. The barbed wire sang as they stretched it tight between posts, a high metallic whine that set Caleb's teeth on edge. Lena watched him work the first post, then took the tools and did the second one herself. Her hands were clumsy at first, the gloves too big, her grip uncertain. But she learned fast. Too fast. By the third post, she was twisting the wire with the kind of economy that came from understanding leverage and tension, things you didn't pick up from field work. Her palms started bleeding through the gloves within an hour. She didn't mention it. Just kept working, sweat darkening the collar of the shirt he'd lent her, one of Kate's old cottonwork shirts that hung loose on her frame. Billy noticed too. He caught Caleb's eye and raised an eyebrow. Caleb shook his head slightly, let it go. By noon, they'd finished the fence line. The wire was tight, the posts solid. Lena pulled off the gloves and looked at her hands. The blisters had burst, leaving raw pink skin underneath. "Real field workers' hands don't blister," Billy said, not unkindly. "They're already leather." I'm learning," she said. They stood there in the heat, the smell of rust and cattle hanging in the air, salt from their sweat mixing with the dust. Billy pulled 3 bottles of water from the cooler in his truck bed and handed them around. They drank in silence, the only sound the distant complaint of the broken windmill. Lena looked at the old tractor sitting under the barn's overhang, half covered by a tarp. That a 65 Ford?" "67, Caleb said. "What's wrong with it?" "Transmission's shot. Can't afford to fix it." She walked over, lifted the tarp. The tractor's blue paint was faded, rust eating through the wheel wells. She studied it with the same focused attention she'd given the fence. Depreciation on this equipment could offset your tax burden. If you document the loss properly, file a casualty deduction. She stopped, looked up. Both men were staring at her. "What?" she asked. "Where'd you learn tax law?" Caleb asked quietly. Her face went carefully blank. "Just things you pick up. Not from picking crops, you don't." And Billy shifted uncomfortably. "I should get going. Got 2 more places to hit before dark." He tipped his hat to Lena. "Ma'am, you did good work today." After he left, Caleb and Lena drove into San Marcos. The mission sat at the edge of town, adobe walls the color of dried blood, a bell tower rising white against the blue sky. Father Miguel Santos ran the place, 60-something, silver hair, hands like a boxer's, from years of construction work before he took the collar. He was in the courtyard when they arrived, filling water buckets at the well. A group of children played nearby, their laughter bright in the afternoon heat. The smell of masa and beans drifted from the kitchen, mixing with the incense from the chapel. Caleb. Miguel straightened, wiping his hands on his cassock. Then he saw Lena and went very still. Just for a second, something passed across his face. Recognition? Surprise, before his expression smoothed into priestly neutrality. "And you've brought a guest." This is Lena," Caleb said. "She's staying at the ranch for a few days." Miguel's eyes lingered on her bruised face. "I see. Well, you're both welcome. I was just about to take lunch. Join me?" They sat at a scarred wooden table in the courtyard shade. Miguel brought out bread, cheese, and coffee in clay mugs. The bell tower cast a long shadow across the packed earth. Lena ate slowly, wincing when the food touched her split lip. Miguel watched her with an expression Caleb couldn't read. Finally, he stood. "Caleb, could I speak with you, in private?" They walked to the chapel entrance out of Lena's earshot. The adobe walls were cool under Caleb's hand, the relief from the heat immediate. "That woman," Miguel said quietly. "She's been here before." "What?" 3 weeks ago. Came at night. No name, wouldn't say where she was from, but she left this." He reached into his cassock and pulled out a receipt worn from handling. $5,000, cash, for the workers' fund. She said she'd seen Desert Rose Farms, seen what they do to people. She wanted to help. Caleb stared at the receipt. The paper trembled slightly in Miguel's hand. 5,000, Caleb repeated. From a woman picking crops for $40 a week? Miguel looked back toward the courtyard, where Lena sat alone at the table. "The ranch she mentioned, Desert Rose. You know who owns it?" "No. Castellano Agribusiness, biggest agricultural conglomerate in the Southwest. Corporate headquarters in Phoenix. Family operation. Old money." Miguel's voice dropped even lower. "You're Lena. What's her last name?" "Castellano," Caleb said. Miguel crossed himself. "Caleb, that family, they own half the valley. And if she's running from them, you're standing in the blast radius." They drove back to the ranch in silence. The sun was dropping toward the horizon, turning the sky the color of a healing bruise. Caleb's hands were tight on the wheel, Miguel's words echoing in his head. "Castellano Agribusiness. If she's running from them, you're standing in the blast radius." At the ranch, Lena went straight to the porch and sat on the top step, staring out at the broken windmill. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her. The evening light caught in her dark hair, softening the bruises on her face. "You should eat something," he said finally. "I'm not hungry." He sat down beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. The wood was still warm from the day's heat. Cicadas had started their evening song, a rising electric hum that filled the spaces between heartbeats. "That windmill," she said. "How long has it been broken?" 2 years, give or take. "You could fix it." "Oh, could." He pulled out his tobacco pouch, rolled a cigarette with practiced fingers. The paper crinkled in the quiet. "Haven't gotten around to it." "Why not?" He lit the cigarette, the match flaring sulfur bright in the dusk. "My wife and I fixed it together once. After the first time it broke. She wasn't afraid of heights. I'd climb up, she'd hand me tools, we had a system." He exhaled smoke. "After she passed, I couldn't make myself go back up there. Felt like betraying something." Lena turned to look at him. "How long ago?" 5 years this October." He nodded toward the photograph visible through the screen door, the one on the mantel. "Cancer, ovarian. By the time they caught it, wasn't much they could do. I'm sorry. She was tougher than me. Right up to the end, she was making plans, talking about what we'd plant next season, how we'd expand the herd. Like if she just kept planning, death would forget to show up." He tapped Ash onto the step. "Cost everything we had, the treatments, the hospital stays. When she died, I inherited the bills in an empty house." The cicadas screamed louder, as if the heat itself had a voice. "That's why the bank has you cornered," Lena said quietly. "That's why." He looked at her. "You want to tell me why you've got $5,000 to give away, but you're running from a labor camp?" She flinched. "Miguel told you." "He did." "I can't explain it." "Can't or won't?" "Does it matter?" Her voice cracked. "You're going to throw me out anyway." Caleb studied the ember of his cigarette. "Haven't decided yet." They sat in silence as the sun touched the horizon. The light turned everything copper and gold, the windmill, the fence posts, her profile. She was younger than Kate had been, but there was something in her stillness that reminded him of his wife, a kind of contained strength like a coiled spring waiting for the right moment to release. I haven't said her name to another person since the funeral, he said. Not in 4 years. Friends stopped asking. Even Billy knows not to bring her up. Why tell me? Don't know. He took a final drag and stubbed out the cigarette. Maybe because you're as lost as I am. She looked down at her hands, at the raw blisters and broken skin. I don't know if I'm lost. I think I've been running so long, I forgot what I was running toward. What are you running from? Before she could answer, she shifted on the step. Something fell from her pocket. A small, hard sound against wood. They both looked down. A credit card. Platinum. The metal caught the last of the daylight like a mirror. Lena snatched for it, but Caleb was faster. He picked it up, turned it over. The embossed letters stood out sharp and official. Elena M. Castellano. The name hit him like a fist. He looked from the card to her face. Elena, he said. She'd gone pale. Caleb. Elena Castellano. He stood up, the card clenched in his hand. Miguel said Castellano Agribusiness owns Desert Rose. Owns half the valley. His voice was rising now, all the careful control fracturing. Who the hell are you? I can explain. You've been lying to me. He threw the card at her feet. It clattered on the wood. From the first goddamn second, I brought you into my house. I talked about Kate. I haven't said her name in 4 years, and I said it to you. I wasn't lying about everything. Then what's the truth? He stepped back, needing distance. Who are you? She stood up slowly, her whole body trembling. My name is Elena Castellano. My family owns Castellano Agribusiness. We have operations in 6 states. Corporate agriculture, labor contracting, land development. Our net worth is approximately $800 million. The number hung in the air like something obscene. 800. Caleb couldn't finish. He looked at her borrowed shirt, her blistered hands, the cheap work dress crumpled in a pile inside. You're a billionaire. Technically, my family is. I don't have direct access to most of it. Trust funds, corporate structures. She caught herself. That doesn't matter. The point is, 3 weeks ago, I was in Phoenix at my engagement party. My parents had arranged it. Senator's son, good bloodlines, good connections. I'd never met him before that night. So you ran. So I ran. She wrapped her arms around herself. I needed to know if I could survive without the money, without the name, if anyone would see me. Elena, just Elena, and not the Castellano fortune. So I took nothing. No credit cards, no phone. I found a labor contractor, gave them a fake name, and got on a bus headed for Desert Rose. Your own family's operation. I didn't know. Her voice broke. I swear to God, I didn't know what they were doing there. The conditions, the violence. They promise workers fair wages and housing, but it's all lies. They trap people, take their documents, threaten deportation. I lasted 3 days before I tried to run. They caught me, beat me, threw me in the back of a van. I jumped out on the highway. Where I found you. Where you found me. Caleb's head was spinning. The ramp he'd built, the fence they'd mended, his confession about Kate, all of it built on a lie. The money you gave Miguel, he said. Where'd you get it? She looked down. I had one credit card. I kept it hidden, emergency use only. I used it once, withdrew cash and gave it away. She met his eyes. I was trying to help. Help. The word tasted bitter. You're standing here in my dead wife's clothes, telling me you're worth $800 million, and you were testing whether people would like you for who you really are. His laugh was harsh. Well, congratulations. The experiment worked. The stupid rancher bought it. Caleb, please. Headlights swept across the porch, bright and sudden. A vehicle was coming up the access road, moving fast. Not a truck this time. Something sleeker, more expensive. Lena saw it and went rigid. No. A black Mercedes SUV pulled into the yard, tires crunching on gravel, the engine cut off. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, mid-40s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Caleb's truck. He had the look of private security, military bearing barely concealed under corporate polish. Miss Castellano, the man called. Your father sent me. It's time to come home. The man in the suit took 3 steps toward the porch and stopped. He kept his hands visible, relaxed at his sides, the posture of someone trained to de-escalate. Miss Castellano, I'm James Chen. Your father hired me to ensure your safe return. No one wants any trouble. And then leave, Elena said. I can't do that. Caleb stepped between them, positioning himself at the top of the stairs. The lady said leave. Chen's eyes shifted to him, assessing. Sir, with respect, this is a family matter. Miss Castellano's parents are very worried. Her fiancé has filed a missing persons report. The longer this goes on, the more complicated it becomes for everyone involved. She's not going anywhere. Well, Caleb. Elena's voice was quiet behind him. It's all right. He turned. She was looking at him with something that might have been gratitude or might have been goodbye. He couldn't tell which. "I should go," she said. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She looked past him at Chen. "Give me 5 minutes. I need to get my things." Chen nodded. "Of course. I'll wait here." Elena went inside. Caleb stood on the porch, the silence stretching between him and the man in the suit. A coyote yipped in the distance, lonely and sharp. "You care about her," Chen said. It wasn't a question. Caleb said nothing. "Then you should know. Going back is the safest option. Her family has resources to protect her. Out here, alone, she's vulnerable." "She wasn't alone." No," Chen agreed. "She had you. And judging by that foreclosure notice on your kitchen table, you've got your own problems. Problems that could go away with one phone call from the right person." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Get off my property." Chen raised his hands, backing toward the SUV. "Just trying to help." The front door opened. Elena stepped out, wearing her own clothes now. Expensive jeans, a silk blouse she'd had hidden somewhere. She looked like a different person, polished, untouchable. The distance between the woman on the highway and the woman standing here was a canyon. She walked past Caleb without looking at him, descended the steps, and stopped halfway to the SUV. "I'm not going," she said. Chen went still. "Miss Castellano, tell my father I'm staying. I'll call him tomorrow." She turned around, walked back up the steps, and stood next to Caleb. "You can leave now." Chen studied them both. Then he pulled out his phone, dialed, and had a brief, quiet conversation. When he hung up, his expression was carefully neutral. "Your father says you have 48 hours to reconsider. After that, he's involving the authorities. Missing person, welfare check, the works. He'll make sure every agency in the state is looking for you." He opened the SUV door. "If you need anything, call me directly, day or night." He got in and drove away, red taillights disappearing down the access road. Caleb and Elena stood on the porch, not looking at each other. The cicadas had gone quiet. The night was thick with heat and unspoken words. "Why'd you stay?" he asked finally. "Because I'm tired of running." "You lied to me." "I did." She looked at him now. "But not about everything. The fear was real. The bruises were real. What I felt here," she gestured at the ranch, the windmill, the dark land beyond. "That was real too." He wanted to believe her. That was the worst part. "I need to think," he said, and went inside. He didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table in the dark. The foreclosure notice spread out in front of him like a map of his own failure. The numbers blurred together, 450,000, 30 days. Kate's signature from 15 years ago, when they'd mortgaged the place to pay for the first round of treatments. All that blood and sweat, all those years, reduced to a paragraph of legal text. Through the thin wall, he could hear Elena moving in the living room, the rustle of the blanket, the creak of the couch, then very quietly, the sound of her voice. She was on the phone. He shouldn't listen, but he did. "I don't care what the trust documents say, Robert. I need access to liquid funds. 2 days? Fine. Wire it to the San Marcos mission account." "Yes. Under Father Miguel's name. Just do it." A pause. "No, don't tell Father." "And Robert?" "The foreclosure notice on the Reed Ranch. I need you to research the lien holder. Thornton County Savings, but dig deeper. I want to know who really controls that note." She hung up. Silence flooded back. Caleb closed his eyes. She was still trying to fix things. Still trying to buy her way to redemption. It made him angry and sad in equal measure. Morning came hard and bright. He was making coffee when she appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed in Kate's work clothes again. Her face was set with determination. "I want to pay off your debt," she said. He didn't turn around. "No." $450,000. I can have it wired today. The ranch is yours, free and clear. You never have to worry about losing it." I said no. "Why not?" Her voice rose. "It's just money. It doesn't mean anything to me, but it means everything to you. Let me help." He turned to face her. "Because I'm not a charity case. Because you don't get to buy your way out of lying to me. And because the second I take your money, I stop being a man who stands on his own." "That's pride talking." Yeah, it is. It's all I've got left." They stared at each other across the kitchen. The coffee maker hissed and bubbled, filling the silence with bitter steam. The sound of an engine cut through the tension. They both turned toward the window. Billy's truck was coming up the access road, moving faster than usual, dust plumes rising behind it like distress signals. He skidded to a stop in the yard and jumped out, not bothering to close the door behind him. His face was flushed, his eyes wide. "Mr. Reed!" He ran up to the porch. "Thornton's men, they're out by the north fence line, surveying equipment, cameras. They're measuring the property." Caleb and Elena looked at each other. "How many?" Caleb asked. 4. Maybe 5. They've got equipment I've never seen before. Looks like oil prospecting gear. Elena's face had gone pale. They're not just taking your land. They're going after what's underneath it. They drove to town in Elena's rented car. She'd had one stashed 2 miles down the road, she admitted, in case she needed to run. The Mercedes was sleek and air-conditioned, a jarring contrast to Caleb's rusted-out Ford. He sat rigid in the passenger seat, watching the landscape blur past. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "Proof that Thornton's claim is fraudulent." Elena's hands were steady on the wheel, her voice all business now. The billionaire heiress had emerged, shedding the lost girl like a skin. "If he's filing mineral leases on your property, there has to be documentation. Original deeds, water rights certificates, historical surveys, paper trail. And if it's legitimate, then we find another way." The Thornton County Courthouse was a 3-story limestone building in the center of San Marcos, surrounded by struggling oleanders and heat-cracked concrete. The records office was in the basement, a warren of filing cabinets and microfiche machines presided over by a woman named Martha Grimes, who'd held the position for 30 years. She looked up when they entered, her reading glasses hanging on a beaded chain. "Caleb Reed, haven't seen you in here since you filed Kate's death certificate." "Martha." He removed his hat. "Need to pull some documents. Property records for my ranch. Original deed, any amendments, mineral rights filings." Martha studied Elena with open curiosity but asked no questions. She disappeared into the stacks and returned with 3 file boxes, each labeled with faded typewriter text. "These go back to 1891, your great-grandfather's homestead claim. Don't remove anything, and don't refold the maps wrong. They're hell to fix." They spread everything across a scarred oak table. The air smelled like old paper and mildew, decades of bureaucracy compressed into dust. Elena pulled out her phone and started photographing documents, her lawyer on speakerphone walking her through what to look for. "Original deed, 1891, she said, holding up a brittle page protected in plastic. "Homesteaded by Silas Reed. Water rights, granted from Cottonwood Creek Aquifer. That's the key. Whoever controls the water controls everything underneath." Caleb unfolded a survey map from 1963. It showed his property boundaries, the creek bed, and notations in his father's handwriting. "This is from when my parents refinanced. After the drought in '62. Elena leaned over his shoulder. "Look at the signature block. Who witnessed it?" He squinted at the faded ink. 2 names, Thomas Reed, his father, and Catherine Ann Brennan, Kate. Before they married, she'd been the bank secretary back then. And a 3rd signature, corporate, authorized agent, CT Holdings, LLC. "CT Holdings," Elena said quietly. "That name mean anything to you?" "No." She typed it into her phone. Her lawyer's voice crackled through the speaker. "CT Holdings is a shell company, registered in Delaware. I'll need time to pierce the corporate veil, but it's likely a trust or investment vehicle. Fairly common for mineral rights transactions in the 60s and 70s. So someone bought the water rights from my father 40 years ago," Caleb said. "Not just someone," Elena's lawyer replied. "CT Holdings has been linked to several major agricultural acquisitions in the Southwest. Let me dig deeper." They kept searching. An hour in, Elena found it, a document filed 6 weeks ago. Mineral lease agreement, Reed Ranch property, filed by Thornton Investments, LLC. She read it twice, her frown deepening, then she handed it to Caleb. "Look at the date." And the document claimed the lease was originally executed in 1965 and recently renewed, but the paper was wrong, too white, too crisp. And the notary seal was from a firm that hadn't existed until 1998. "It's a forgery," Caleb said. "It's sloppy." Elena took more photos. He backdated it to make it look like he had historical claim, but he used modern paper stock and a contemporary notary. This wouldn't hold up in court for 5 minutes. Yeah. Then why file it? Because most people don't check. They see the official stamp, they assume it's real. By the time anyone challenges it, he's already drilled and extracted what he needs. She looked at him. "He's betting you won't have the money or the legal resources to fight." Martha reappeared, carrying a manila folder. "Found something else you might want. Water rights certificate, 1963, filed the same day as that refinance." She laid the certificate on the table. It was an official document from the state of New Mexico, transferring aquifer access rights from Thomas and Catherine Reed to CT Holdings, LLC. Payment amount, $25,000. Kate's signature was at the bottom, neat and careful in blue ballpoint. Caleb stared at it. "She never told me." "She was 23, Martha said gently. "Just married. Your father was dying of emphysema. They needed money for his care. This was probably the only way." Elena's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. "You're certain?" "Yes. Send me everything." She hung up and looked at Caleb. "My lawyer just broke through the CT Holdings shell. It's owned by a family trust. She took a breath. The Castellano family trust. My family bought your water rights in 1963. The room tilted. Caleb gripped the edge of the table. Your family, he repeated. My grandfather. He was building the business, buying up agricultural resources all over the Southwest, aquifer access, irrigation rights. Most of it just sat unused. Pure investment, long-term assets. She was talking fast now, the words tumbling out. I didn't know. I swear I had no idea until just now. Your family owns my water, and Thornton's trying to steal it with a fake lease, which means Thornton doesn't know about CT Holdings. He thinks the rights are still with your property. If we expose his forgery and prove my family's legitimate ownership, then you save me and you save yourself. Caleb stood up, his chair scraping loud in the quiet. Convenient. Caleb, I need air. He walked out of the records office, up the stairs, and out into the blazing afternoon. The heat hit him like a wall. He leaned against the limestone, trying to breathe, trying to think. She'd been part of it all along, not intentionally maybe. But her family's money had been woven through his life for 40 years, invisible strings he'd never known existed. Elena emerged a few minutes later. She didn't speak, just stood beside him in the heat. Rose's Diner is across the square, he said finally. We should eat, figure out what comes next. Rose's Diner was a shotgun, narrow building with vinyl booths and a counter worn smooth by decades of elbows. The smell of fried onions and coffee hung thick in the air. Rosa Delgado stood behind the register, 55, steel gray hair in a bun, arms that could wrestle a steer. She'd known Caleb since he was a boy. She took one look at Elena and went very still. Hello, Rosa, Elena said quietly. Rosa came around the counter. For a moment, Caleb thought she might throw them out. Instead, she gestured to the back booth, the one tucked away from the windows. Sit. I'll bring coffee. They slid into the booth. The vinyl was patched with duct tape and the table wobbling on uneven legs. Rosa brought 2 mugs and a pot, poured without asking, and sat down across from them. I knew, she said, looking at Elena. Saw your picture in the Phoenix Business Journal 2 months ago. Society page, engagement announcement. She turned to Caleb. You want to tell me what the hell you've gotten yourself into? She was running, Caleb said. I found her on the highway. And now? Now we're trying to keep Thornton from stealing my land. Rosa snorted. Thornton. That man's been buying up the valley for 2 years, making cash offers nobody can refuse. Except you, stubborn as a mule. She looked at Elena. And you think you can stop him? I think I can prove his mineral lease is forged. Proof doesn't mean much in this county. Thornton owns the sheriff, owns the bank, probably owns the judge too. Rosa pulled a folded newspaper from her apron pocket and slid it across the table. But he might have bigger problems. The headline read, Oil development deal in jeopardy, investors threaten lawsuit. Elena scanned the article. Thornton Investments has promised Aquifer access to a consortium of oil companies. They're threatening to pull out of a $70 million deal if he can't deliver the water rights by month's end. That's why he's moving so fast, Caleb said. He's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes, Rosa said. And desperate men can be beaten. She looked at Elena. Question is, are you willing to stand up in public and tell everyone who you really are? Because that's what it'll take. This town needs to see the Castellano heiress calling Thornton a fraud on the courthouse steps. Elena's hands tightened around her coffee mug. If I do that, my family will know exactly where I am. They already know, honey. You think that PI left and didn't report back? Then they'll drag me home. Maybe. Rosa leaned back. Or maybe you finally stop running and decide what you're really fighting for. The bell over the door chimed. All 3 of them looked up. Sheriff Wade Hollis stood in the entrance, his hand resting on his belt. Behind him, 2 deputies. Caleb Reed, Wade said. Need you to come with me. Got some questions about a missing worker and potential harboring charges. The diner went silent. Every head turned. Rosa stood up slowly, positioning herself between the booth and the deputies. Wade, you're interrupting my lunch service? Sorry, Rosa. This is official business. Wade's eyes stayed on Caleb. Had a complaint filed this morning. Desert Rose Farm says you're harboring a fugitive worker. That's a federal offense if she's undocumented. She's not undocumented, Elena said, sliding out of the booth. I'm a U.S. citizen, Elena Castellano. You want to see my identification? Wade's jaw tightened. He'd been expecting resistance, not credentials. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come down to the station and make a formal statement. No. Caleb stood up. You want to arrest someone, arrest me. She's not going anywhere with you. Caleb, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder for who? You or Thornton? The deputies shifted, hands moving toward their belts. The tension in the diner was thick enough to choke on. Rosa stepped forward, her voice carrying to every booth and bar stool. Wade Hollis, your mother would be ashamed. Running errands for Marcus Thornton like you're his hired boy. Wade's face flushed. This is law enforcement business? This is harassment. Rosa crossed her arms. And everyone in this diner is a witness. Now, you want to arrest Caleb for helping someone bleeding on the side of the road? Go ahead. But you'll do it with the whole town watching. For a long moment, Wade just stood there. Then he lowered his hand from his belt. We'll be in touch, he said. Caleb, you'd be smart to get yourself a lawyer. He walked out, the deputies following. The door chimed behind them. The silence in the diner broke slowly. Whispers started, low, and spreading like fire in dry grass. Caleb heard fragments. Billionaire girl, lying to everyone, probably in on it with Thornton. An old man at the counter turned around. Jake Simmons, who'd ranched neighboring land for 50 years. Caleb, you brought a Castellano into your house? Her family's been buying up the valley, driving folks off their land. And you're protecting her? Jake, my grandson lost his job because Castellano agribusiness shut down. The local feed mill. Consolidated operations, they called it. Put 40 men out of work. Jake's voice was shaking. You're a traitor, Caleb. To all of us. He threw money on the counter and walked out. 2 other men followed. Rosa touched Caleb's arm. Go home. Let this settle. But it didn't settle. By the time they got back to the ranch, word had spread. Billy was waiting in the yard, his face pale. Mr. Reed, you need to know the feed store won't give you credit anymore. Said you're a risk. And Joe Brennan called. He can't lease you his bulls this season. Says his wife won't allow it. Caleb stood in the dust, feeling the ground shift under him. Joe Brennan was Kate's cousin. They'd been at the wedding, the funeral, every Christmas for 20 years. All right, he said quietly. Thanks for telling me, Billy. I don't care what they say, Mr. Reed. I'll keep working, even if you can't pay me for a while. I appreciate that. Billy drove off, leaving Caleb and Elena standing in the yard. The broken windmill creaked in the wind, a rusty metronome counting down the hours until foreclosure. I'm sorry, Elena said. Don't. This is my fault. I should leave. If I'm gone, maybe they'll forgive you. And maybe they won't. He looked at her. Town's made up its mind. Leaving now just proves them right. They went inside. The house felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Elena sat at the kitchen table while Caleb paced. The foreclosure notice was still there, held down by a coffee mug. The numbers as unforgiving as they'd been that morning. My lawyer finished the research, Elena said quietly. CT Holdings, my family's trust, purchased your water rights in 1963 for $25,000. The contract stipulates the rights remain dormant unless exercised by the trust or transferred back to the property owner. Meaning Thornton has no legal claim. His mineral lease is worthless without water access, but also, she hesitated, the money your father received. It went directly to St. Catherine's Hospital in Albuquerque. I found the payment records. Your mother had been sick too. Pneumonia, complications from childbirth. The $25,000 paid for both their treatments. Caleb stopped pacing. Kate never told me. She was protecting you. She knew if you found out her family's money, even before you met her, had saved your parents, you'd feel like you owed her something, like the ranch wasn't really yours. He sank into a chair, the weight of it crushing. All these years, he'd thought the ranch was his through blood and sweat. But it had been bought with Castellano money before he'd even known the name. Kate didn't just marry you, Caleb. She invested in you, literally. And she never told you because she knew your pride would poison it. His hands were shaking. I need to work. What? I need to work. Fix something. Move. I can't just sit here. He stood and walked out into the evening heat. The sun was dropping, painting the sky orange and red. He walked to the windmill, stood at its base, and looked up. The ladder was rusted. The blades were frozen. It had been broken for 2 years, and he'd left it that way because climbing it meant facing what he'd lost. Elena appeared beside him. Let me help. You don't know how to fix a windmill. Then teach me. They climbed together. The ladder groaned under their weight, flakes of rust falling like snow. At the top, the mechanism was seized. Years of neglect, dirt packed into the gears. Caleb pulled tools from his belt and started working, his hands remembering the motions Kate had watched him perform a dozen times. Elena held the wrench while he loosened bolts. Her hands were still blistered from the fence work, the skin raw and weeping, but she didn't complain, just held steady, doing what needed doing. Kate used to stand right here, he said. She'd hand me the tools, tell me when I was being an idiot, which was most of the time. She sounds like she was smart. Smarter than me. He wiped sweat from his forehead. She knew I couldn't accept help, so she hid it. buried it in paperwork and legal structures so I'd never know I was being saved. Is that so wrong? It's a lie. It's love. Elena looked at him. Sometimes they're the same thing. He worked in silence, loosening the seized bearing, cleaning out the dirt. The sun dropped lower, the heat finally breaking. When he freed the main gear, it groaned and shifted, rust cracking loose. Try it, he said. Elena pushed the blade. It moved, slower. Slow at first, then faster. The windmill turned, metal singing against metal, and far below, the pump started to shudder. No water yet. The well had been dry too long, but the mechanism was alive again. They climbed down as the last light faded. Billy's truck appeared on the access road, coming fast. He jumped out before the engine stopped. Mr. Reed? Ah, yes. His face was flushed, his hand clutching a piece of paper. They posted it. At the courthouse, the feed store, Rosa's diner, everywhere. He thrust the paper at Caleb. It was a public notice, printed on official county letterhead. Public auction, Reed Ranch property, 8 and 47 acres, courthouse steps, San Marcos, date, July 28th, 1978, 10:00 a.m. Minimum bid, $450,000 tomorrow. The auction was tomorrow. Below the details, in smaller print, conducted under authority of Thornton County Savings and Loan, interested parties may inspect property records at courthouse. And at the very bottom, almost as an afterthought, mineral rights and water access convey with property per existing lease agreements. Elena read it over his shoulder. Her face had gone white. That's illegal. He can't claim mineral rights that don't exist. He just did, Caleb said. In writing, public record. Then we expose him tomorrow, at the auction, in front of everyone. With what? The forged document? The CT holding certificate? Elena, half the town thinks I'm a traitor. They're not going to believe me. They'll believe me. She took the notice from his hand. I'm Elena Castellano. My family owns the water rights. And tomorrow, I'm going to stand on those courthouse steps and tell everyone exactly who Marcus Thornton is and what he's trying to steal. Caleb looked at her, this woman who'd lied to him, who'd brought chaos into his carefully isolated world, who was now offering to destroy her own anonymity to save him. Your family will come for you, he said. I know. You'll lose your freedom. Maybe. She met his eyes. But I'll keep my integrity. And right now that's worth more. The windmill creaked behind them, turning slowly in the evening wind. Still no water. But the blades were moving, and that was something. The courthouse steps were packed. Caleb hadn't expected this many. 100 people, maybe more, crowding the square in the morning heat. Some he recognized, Rosa, Father Miguel, Billy standing near the back with his hat in his hands. Others were strangers, vultures drawn by the scent of a dying ranch. Marcus Thornton stood near the front, wearing a white suit that looked like it cost more than a year's cattle receipts. He was talking to Frank Garvey, the bank manager, their heads bent close. When Thornton saw Caleb, he smiled. The auctioneer was a county clerk named Morton Wells, thin, 50s, with a voice that could carry across a canyon. He stood at the top of the steps, flanked by Sheriff Wade and 2 deputies. The auction notice was posted on the courthouse door behind him, official and final. Caleb and Elena pushed through the crowd. People moved aside, but not in a friendly way. He heard the whispers. Brought a Castellano here. Probably planned this whole thing. She's rich as sin and he's pretending to be broke. Jake Simmons was near the front. He spat into the dust when Caleb passed. They reached the steps. Morton looked at his watch, cleared his throat, and spoke. This is a public auction for the property known as Reed Ranch, 847 acres located in Thornton County, New Mexico. Minimum bid is $450,000, cash or certified funds. Auction will proceed until no further bids are offered. All sales final, no warranties expressed or implied. His voice echoed off the limestone building. The crowd pressed closer. The smell of sweat and cologne mixed with the dust rising from shuffling feet. Do I have an opening bid? $500,000. Thornton's voice was calm, practiced, like he was ordering lunch. The crowd murmured. Morton wrote it down. $500,000. Do I hear $550,000? Silence. Nobody else was bidding. Why would they? Everyone knew Thornton wanted it, and nobody crossed Thornton in this county. $500,000 going once. Caleb's jaw was tight. His hands were clenched. This was it. The end of 4 generations bought and paid for by a man in a white suit. $500,000 going twice. Elena stepped forward. She'd dressed carefully that morning. Simple clothes, Kate's cotton shirt, work boots. Her hair was pulled back, no jewelry, nothing to mark her as different from anyone else in the crowd, except her voice. When she spoke, it carried with absolute clarity. Before you finalize this sale, there's something everyone needs to know. Morton paused, his gavel raised. Ma'am, if you're not bidding. I'm not bidding, I'm objecting, on grounds of fraud. The crowd erupted. Thornton's face went dark. Sheriff Wade moved toward Elena, but Father Miguel stepped in his path, blocking him with his body. Let her speak, Miguel said quietly. Wade looked at the crowd, at Rosa, at Billy, at the faces of people he'd known his whole life. He stepped back. Morton looked uncertain. Ma'am, this is a legal proceeding. Then let's keep it legal. Elena pulled a folder from her bag and held it up. This auction is based on a foreclosure notice filed by Thornton County Savings and Loan. That notice includes a claim to mineral rights based on a lease filed 6 weeks ago. I have proof that lease is a forgery. Thornton moved fast. This is outrageous. Sheriff, remove her. No. Rosa's voice rang out. Let her talk. Others joined in. Let her speak. What's he hiding? Show us the proof. Morton looked at Wade. Wade looked at Thornton. The moment hung suspended, balanced on the edge of a knife. 1 minute, Morton said finally. You've got 1 minute to make your case. Elena climbed the steps. She stood next to Morton, facing the crowd, and Caleb saw her hands trembling, but her voice was steady. My name is Elena Castellano. Some of you know that name. My family owns Castellano Agribusiness. We have operations across 6 states, including Desert Rose Farms. The murmuring grew louder, hostile. Caleb saw people's faces harden. I'm not here to defend my family's business practices. I'm here to tell you the truth about this auction. She held up the first document. This is Marcus Thornton's mineral lease, filed 6 weeks ago. It claims to be from 1965, but look at the paper. It's modern stock. Look at the notary seal. It's from a firm that didn't exist until 1998. This document is a forgery. She handed it to Morton. He studied it, his expression shifting. Furthermore, Elena continued, even if the document were legitimate, Thornton has no claim to water rights on this property. Those rights were sold in 1963. She held up the second document, the certificate Martha had found. This is the official water rights transfer from Thomas and Catherine Reed to CT Holdings LLC. That's my family's trust. We've held those rights for 15 years. Unused, dormant, but legally ours. Thornton was pushing through the crowd now, his face red. This is a setup. She's lying to protect her boyfriend. I have bank records, Elena said, her voice rising over his. I have the original deed. I have testimony from the county clerk who filed these documents. And I have this. She pulled out the final page. The crowd went silent. This is a payment receipt from St. Catherine's Hospital in Albuquerque, dated November 1963. $25,000, paid by CT Holdings for the medical treatment of Sarah Reed and Thomas Reed, Caleb's parents. Caleb felt the world stop. He knew about the water rights sale. But this, seeing it in writing, seeing the proof that Kate's family had saved his parents' lives before he'd even met her, it broke something open inside him. Elena's voice softened. Kate Reed knew what her family had done. She never told her husband because she knew he'd see it as charity, as debt, but it wasn't. It was an investment in this land, in this community, and Thornton is trying to steal it with forged documents and corrupt officials. She turned to face Thornton directly. You promised oil investors access to the aquifer. You sold them a $70 million deal based on rights you don't own. That's fraud, Mr. Thornton. That's a crime. Thornton's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Morton set down his gavel. Sheriff, I think we need to postpone this auction pending an investigation. Like hell, Thornton snarled. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyers. This auction is legal. No, it's not. A new voice cut through the crowd. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit was pushing forward. James Chen, the private investigator who'd come for Elena 2 days ago. Behind him were 3 other men in suits carrying briefcases. I'm James Chen, representing the Castellano Family Trust. He handed Morton a document. This is a cease and desist order, filed this morning in federal court. Marcus Thornton is barred from any transaction involving water rights or mineral leases on the Reed property. Furthermore, we're filing criminal complaints for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. He turned to the crowd. CT Holdings is prepared to transfer the water rights back to Caleb Reed, free and clear, for the sum of $1. The original intent of the 1963 purchase was to provide emergency medical funds, not to control the property. That intent has been fulfilled. Caleb couldn't breathe. What? Chen handed him a document. Sign this, Mr. Reed. The ranch is yours, truly yours. No debt, no liens, no strings. Elena was looking at him, tears streaming down her face. I called my father last night. I told him everything, what Thornton was doing, what you'd done for me. Her voice broke. He said Kate wrote to my grandfather once, after your parents died. She thanked him for saving them. She asked that when the time was right, the land be returned to your family. He kept her letter for 15 years. The crowd erupted. Some were cheering. Others were shouting questions. Thornton was backing away, his white suit dusty, his face ashen. Sheriff Wade had his hand on his radio, calling for backup. Rosa was crying. Father Miguel was crossing himself. Billy was grinning like a fool. And Caleb stood on the courthouse steps, holding a document that weighed nothing and meant everything, looking at the woman who'd come into his life as a lie and stayed to tell the hardest truth he'd ever heard. Morton banged his gavel. Auction canceled. Property sale voided pending resolution of the fraud investigation. The gavel's crack echoed like a gunshot, and Caleb finally let himself believe it. The ranch was his. Kate's legacy was safe, and the woman standing beside him, tears on her face, and her hand reaching for his, had given him the one thing he'd thought he'd lost forever, the truth. 1 week later, the windmill turned in the evening light, its blades cutting shadows across the yard. Water flowed from the well for the first time in 2 years, not a flood, but a steady trickle that pooled in the stock tank and ran in a thin, silver line toward the dry creek bed. Caleb stood watching it, a tin cup in his hand. The sound of water on metal was almost musical, a rhythm he'd forgotten. Thornton was in jail. The forgery charges had stuck, and the fraud investigation had uncovered 3 other properties he'd tried to steal, using the same method. Frank Garvey had resigned from the bank and left town. Sheriff Wade was facing a recall election. The valley was slowly remembering how to breathe. Billy appeared from the barn, leading the old mare they'd been shoeing. "She's good to go, Mr. Reed. Ought to last her through winter." "Thanks, Billy." The kid hesitated. "There's something I wanted to ask about expansion. If you're keeping the place, I was thinking we could run more cattle on the north section now that the water's back. I could work full-time if you need the help." Caleb studied him. Billy had stayed when the town turned. That counted for something. "Let's talk numbers tomorrow. But yeah, I could use someone steady." Billy grinned and headed for his truck. As he passed Elena, who was walking up from the fence line with wire cutters and gloves, he tipped his hat. "Ma'am." She nodded, her face streaked with dust and sweat. She'd been working the ranch every day since the auction, refusing to leave, refusing to go back to Phoenix even when her father had called 3 times. She was dressed in work clothes now, jeans worn through at the knees, one of Caleb's old shirts with the sleeves rolled up. Her hands were healing, the blisters hardening into calluses. She looked real. "Fence is done," she said, stripping off the gloves. 3 sections, all tight. I should hold through next season." "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." She looked at the windmill, at the water flowing. "Did it work? For real this time?" "Come see." They walked to the stock tank together. The water was clear, cold, tasting of limestone and ancient aquifers. Caleb filled the tin cup and handed it to her. She drank, closing her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was smiling. "It's good," she said. "It's ours." He paused. "Yours and mine. Legal now. Chen filed the transfer papers yesterday. The water rights are back with the land deed. No more CT holdings. Just Reed Ranch." "And you're okay with that? Knowing my family's money? Save my parents. Save this place. Yeah." He took the cup back, drank. "I'm okay with it. Took me a while. But Kate knew what she was doing. She was always smarter than me." They stood in the cooling evening air. The cicadas were starting their song. The sky was turning orange and pink, the clouds lit from underneath like coals. "I got a call from my father this morning," Elena said quietly. "He wants me to come home, not to Phoenix, to one of the regional offices. Run the Southwest operations, oversee reforms at Desert Rose, make sure what happened there doesn't happen again." Caleb's chest tightened. "That's good. That's what you wanted, to make a difference." "It is." She looked at him. "But I told him I need time to finish what I started here." "Elena, I'm not running anymore, Caleb. I'm not hiding. But I'm also not ready to go back to that world. Not yet." She gestured at the ranch, the windmill, the land stretching out under the evening light. "This place, it taught me something about who I am when nobody's watching, when there's no money, no name, no safety net. Just work and truth and people who see you for what you do, not what you own." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to stay, not forever, but for now, as a partner. I invest in the ranch. Real investment, not charity. We expand the herd, fix the equipment, rebuild. I work, you work. We split it down the middle. Fair terms. Business arrangement." Business arrangement?" he repeated, with the option to revisit terms as circumstances change. And a small smile touched her lips. "That's corporate speak for let's see what happens." He looked at her, this woman who'd arrived, broken and lying and terrified, who'd stayed to stand on courthouse steps and burn her own bridges to save his, who'd traded a billionaire's life for blistered hands and barbed wire, and the simple dignity of earning her place. "All right," he said. "Partners." He held out his hand. She took it. Her grip was firm, her palm rough with new calluses. The windmill turned behind them, water splashing into the tank, and for the first time in 5 years, Caleb Reed felt something close to peace. Now, I reckon there's something to be said about truth and the cost of it. Caleb learned that summer what Kate had known all along. Sometimes the people who save you do it quiet, in ways you'll never see until you're ready to look. And Elena, she learned that running from your name doesn't make you free. Standing still and earning your place, that's what freedom looks like. The windmill still turns up there on the Reed Ranch. Water flows where it was dry. The land remembers what hands touched it, what sweat fell into its dust. Some debts can't be paid with money, but dignity, trust, those you earn one day at a time, one fence post, one truth spoken when lies would have been easier. Kate was right about one thing. Things that break can be mended. Sometimes they come back stronger at the seams. Sometimes they come back singing,